the name of our show.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Large Glass.
Welcome.
I'm Todd.
I'm Terry.
And we are here to bring you some art.
Some art.
We're going to bring you some art.
And some love.
There's Dave. There's Pumpkin Audrey. There's
Hello.
Ben. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. We got a Valentine's Day show.
Mom.
Tonight. Hi, Mom. Valentine's Day show.
Valentine's Day show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some couples going on.
We do have some couples going on.
Yeah.
And they're not the traditional couples, which I like. They're not like who you immediately think of.
Yeah, we're not doing Lee Krasner and Jackson Pollock, although they were the quintessential one of the quintessential artist couples.
We thought of them. We love them. We absolutely do.
You can't not love them. I mean, even if you're terrified of Jackson Pollock
Yes.
Right.
On multiple levels, yes.
Well, but so we've got some good people for you. How's everybody doing? Put it in the chat. Get a conversation going. Let's chat.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, who subscribed? Mom subscribed. Thank you. Keeping it going. I don't know how many months that is. Oh, you're on a 4-month streak.
4 months.
Dang, leave it to Mom. By the way, Mom, the soup is gone.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, thanks for that.
That was a treat.
That was awesome. We got fed tonight by my mom.
Yep, homemade soup.
Which we love.
Bread.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Frida and Diego, that's
another quintessential couple that we are actually not doing tonight, but we did think of for sure.
Think of them. So a little bit different
a little bit different. We're going to give you something new. So we are going to drink, and tonight we have beer.
We do. And
we have Terrimc Brewing Company from Athens, Georgia, because this might tip you off. And I mean, I already put it in the title of the show, so you probably already know who we're doing, but one of our couples reigns from Athens, Georgia. At least temporarily they were there.
Yeah, well, I know the one artist was from there. I don't know if his partner was from there. She's not from there. In fact, she's from Canada.
Okay.
But he is from Georgia.
But they both shared a studio in Athens, Georgia.
Yes.
And so we went after a little Athens, Georgia beer.
Little Athens, Georgia flavor.
And we've got two really interesting ones. So Terrapin makes a whole bunch of different beers, and you can see that I've got a really, really deep stout going here, and this is the coffee oatmeal. What does that say?
Imperial Stout.
Imperial Stout. I don't have my glasses on.
Wake and Bake.
It's called Wake and Bake. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, Wake and Bake, since this is called the Large Glass and not the Large Glass Pipe.
Yes.
And the other one that we have that Terry's drinking is a hemp cherry Berliner Weisse.
Yes.
So that's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that stout does look yummy. And this hemp cherry, I got to tell you, you can smell the hemp in this.
You can.
Holy cow.
I always pregame because I'm not sure if I'm going to make a little funny face when I first taste it.
Look at that color. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. All right, so we've got
very pretty.
Yeah, mine's called Wake and Bake, and yours has hemp in it.
Yeah.
Man, you can smell that. Can you smell the hemp?
Oh yeah.
It's fantastic. All right.
All right. So here's to episode 22.
Here's to episode 22. Valentine's couples.
Yeah.
And
cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh.
Mom's. Whoa. That's incredible.
Wow. Mine's like a tart cherry.
Mine is like
tart cherry.
Mine is like a whole breakfast. It's good. It's good. Mom wants to know if hemp was used instead of hops. I doubt it was used in place of hops, but it's definitely used in there for flavor. So I don't know. Yeah, we do. We have a lot of episodes. 22 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm kind of proud of that.
I am very proud of that.
I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, we're just going. Pretty soon we'll hit 25.
Oh, we got to do something for the 25th
that's gonna
episode.
Be an occasion.
That's a big one. We're a quarter of a century.
I'm trying to think of what we have lined up. So that'll be the first week of March.
Well, we've got some cool stuff coming. We do have on the horizon. In 2 weeks, we're going to be in an artist studio, actually live with them. So they're going to be coming to us from their studio. We're going to show their work first as like we normally do, like a slideshow, and we'll have them in their studio standing by, and then we're going to actually see where they work and their process, which is going to be, I think, pretty awesome. But we've got, I don't know, we're out 5 or 6 weeks at this point with who we have, so we're
we've got
stockpiled.
some stuff lined up.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So let's see. I want to. Where are we going to start tonight? I think we're starting with our hashtag roulette.
We can certainly start with our hashtag roulette. I just have to flip through my pages of notes.
So as you guys know, on Saturday nights we do hashtag roulette, which is basically, we kind of scroll through Instagram. We have a big roulette wheel with all kinds of hashtags on there. It randomly chooses one, and then we look for people to follow. It's fun. It's kind of part of our process in how we do this show. So, and we like to take the people that we found and followed or were really excited about and just mention them on this show as potential people that you could in fact follow. So let's take a look at some of those, because we've got a couple of really cool ones to show, and I did not plan on starting with this one,
but that's okay.
But we could start with this one.
Okay.
So this guy is known as the Fade Falls In. Really nice Instagram feed of some linearity, some abstraction, a little bit of hints of figuration in there. So,
and we found him under the hashtag of figurative, but he has lots. You can obviously see lots and lots of hashtags there. I really like the line work and the. You could see some figures in his drawings, obviously, because he's under figurative. So, and the energy. Yeah,
Carolyn Thau is here. Hi, Carolyn. Nice to see you.
Hi, Carolyn.
Thanks for joining us on our Valentine show. Pumpkin Audrey's like, and I won all the prizes.
She did.
She's trying to rub it in for Mom.
She is. She's going to be wearing all of our swag, walking down the street, looking really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so this is as the fade falls in, underscores between each of those words.
Yes.
Let's see. Who do we have next? Allison Ann Collage.
Yes.
Now, I got to tell you, on Allison Ann Collage, we messed up gender pronouns on their Instagram feed, and they politely corrected me, which I was, really thrilled about, actually. And we often struggle with that because oftentimes a Instagram title, it's really hard to figure out gender pronouns from that.
Figure out, and historically, when you look at the names, you assume a gender, which is you can't really do anymore. So,
but
that's okay. We stand corrected.
Not necessarily to make this about that, because I think the work that Allison is putting out there is absolutely fantastic. These collages are just really, really carefully chosen, and just in terms of those compositions and the combinations of materials, and they really do a fantastic job of making some interesting choices. So check out Allison Ann Collage. Their work is fantastic. Let's move on to our third one, and that is going to be Jim Kopp. So we found Jim Kopp under the Outsider Art hashtag.
We did, and we were very impressed.
Yeah, this guy's awesome. He definitely fits into that outsider art category. The stuff has a kind of a primitive feel to it, oftentimes with painted frames. Really, really fun and bizarre imagery. Bought one. Mom says bought one of it. You bought one of his pieces?
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
You. That's great.
Wow. So somebody in our show went out and supported one of those artists.
That's
Good job.
Excellent. That's
we
great.
love that. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's Jim Kopp, and the Instagram handle on that is at Jim Kopp, KOPP _. There's an underscore at the end of the name. So keep a lookout for Jim Kopp, Allison Ann Collage, and As the Fade Falls In.
Yep, those were our favorites.
They're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So what's going to be next for us tonight?
I don't know. Do you want to do...
I think we're going to do the news.
Let's do the news.
Would it be cheesy if I got one of those really, really funny transitional things with like a spinning globe and then some kind of like, intense music? It would, wouldn't it? Yeah. Come on, I can dream. I'm dreaming. All right. Sup? What's going on? We're going to start with this guy. This is Charlie McGee. Charlie McGee passed away this week. He was a Detroit artist, really heavily involved in the scene in Detroit, a real contributor to the arts community in Detroit. He actually even started his own school there. He was a great player in that whole art field, and we'll miss him. I got a few images of his work here, both involved in a lot of painting, sculpture, collage work, and the works are just gorgeous. When you see them, they're really quite delightful, and so Charlie will be missed and brought a lot to the Detroit scene. So that is our first bit of news. He was 96 years old, though.
Wow.
So he had a nice,
he had a
long life. Yeah, for sure. Let's see, back on the local scene, since we like to keep it local sometimes out here in the good old state of New Jersey, which is where we are. In beautiful downtown Clinton, New Jersey, in Hunterdon County, the Clinton Art Museum often has some really great shows running, and I check them all the time. And I even reported on one of those a couple of weeks ago when we looked at the show they're having on the glass works that are there. And this show I completely overlooked. But this is Laura Moriarty that is also showing there currently. And I really think that you should go check this out if you can. You can also go on their website, which is hunterdonartmuseum.org. And see an interview with all of the artists from that show, which was Laura Moriarty, the glass show, and there's another architect in there. Maybe we'll just plug him next week.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
But these pieces are fantastic. She's from the Hudson Valley, New York, and this show is called Resurfacing. And what she's doing is she's using a lot of encaustic paint that she's creating sculptures out of. So there are these like solid bricks of encaustic paint that she carves away from, creating these like these little
striated blocks.
They're like layers of the earth. They're quite beautiful. The show is up until April, let me double check, April 18th. I think that was extended. It was originally only supposed to be up till March. They do have restricted visitation situation because of the pandemic, so go on their website and see about that. But Laura Moriarty, definitely worth checking out. And she has a fantastic website, lauramoriarty.com. So also go and look at that. Love that.
Do you know if the museum is doing anything to accommodate online viewing? Probably.
I don't know exactly. I can't say for sure.
Okay.
But when I was on the site, there were a lot of resources available for going and looking at this work. But they don't have. I couldn't find any virtual tours.
Okay.
So, but double check. I could be off on that. So anyway, this is definitely worth a look, and that is going to cover tonight's news.
All right.
So I think next up is birthdays.
Birthdays.
All right, birthdays.
All right.
Notable birthdays.
Notable
So
birthdays.
who are we starting out with tonight again? I forget.
I don't know which order you have them
Not
in.
that guy. This
Not
guy.
That guy. Okay.
You want to start?
This is Robert Morris.
Yep.
He was born in 1931. He's an American sculptor and conceptual artist, also a writer. He was actually born today. And we're looking at some of his work right here. I don't know how many slides
I
you
just have
chose
one slide for
one
Morris.
slide
Yeah,
for him.
just one.
So that's him. So happy birthday, Robert.
Happy birthday, Robert.
We also have this very well-known artist, Joan Mitchell.
Joan Mitchell. Yep.
Yep. And she was born actually on the 12th of February. So her birthday is coming up shortly. She was born in 1925, abstract expressionist, painter, printmaker. So her birthday's up next.
Yep.
And then also...
Oh, wait, I had one more piece of Joan Mitchell there.
I'm
Sorry
so
about that. So a painting of Joan Mitchell. And of course, there is this guy.
Now, I love this guy
So
for
do I.
a lot of reasons.
love Grant
And we
Wood.
actually have a story about him. We have a couple stories
We
about
have a
him.
couple of Grant Wood stories.
So Grant Wood was born on February 13th back in 1891. You know American Gothic, which we actually got to see
yes.
in the flesh a few years
I
ago.
didn't put the picture of us in front of American
I
Gothic
know.
up.
We snuck a picture. It was in the Whitney, so it was really cool to be there.
Yeah.
But we had a professor a long time ago when we first met back in the 90s. His name is Alan Cosgrove. And one thing he used to love to say, his professor and when he was going for his BFA, was taught by Grant Wood, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct.
So he used to say my professor's professor was Grant Wood, and he told us that we could say our professor's professor's professor was Grant Wood.
That's right. So we're 3 generations removed from Grant Wood.
We're 3 generations removed from the Grant Wood.
The Grant Wood. But I have to tell you, if American Gothic is all you know about Grant Wood made some absolutely fantastic paintings.
Oh my God.
Not that there's anything wrong with American
and
Gothic.
To see them live, this was one of my favorite paintings that we saw, because it just took us by storm. The perspective and the shadows.
Everything's so skewed and twisted.
It's fantastic.
And then he's got these amazing, like, voluptuous landscapes. These landscapes that are just billowing.
And the patterns in them, too.
Yeah.
And just the detail in them, just seeing them up close. You can't look at a computer monitor and get too close to the real deal.
What we're trying to say is this show is worthless. You shouldn't watch it anymore. You should go see real art, for crying out loud. What are we doing here?
I should stop. We're just giving you an idea of how awesome he is.
That's right. That's right. No, he really is something else, and we wish him a happy birthday today also. And
13th.
that is the end of birthdays.
That's the end of the birthdays. Yeah.
And Grant Wood's not turning off, so we're just going to turn him off by hand.
There
All right.
we go.
So that's the end of that.
Okay.
What else we got?
Supporting us. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
We'll talk about that, right?
Yeah.
All right. So as per the usual, every time we get to this point in the show, we always talk about how you can support us. And our show is, it takes a lot of work, and you can subscribe to our channel, our Twitch channel. That's one way. And we have a subscriber goal when we hit 15 subscribers. So if you look right there, that pink bar right there, boom, 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 boom. It's currently 2/3 of the way full, 10 out of 15. When that fills up to 15 subscribers, we are going to be giving away one of my, if I could get it up here, it's here, and it's here. One of my cabinet cards to somebody in a random drawing once we hit 15 subscribers. So we're looking forward to getting to that number, and we thank all of those of you who are currently subscribing to the channel. We love that, and we appreciate it very, very much. So that will happen. Other ways you can subscribe, or other ways you can support us, tell your friends. Tell your friends to come watch the show. It really helps us out a lot. And having just people sitting in here checking us out is a big deal. And that's really what we want, and what we look forward to is kind of getting this show out to you. So there is that. Okay, so that covers everything.
Everything.
Except the artists.
The artists. And tonight we actually have 4 artists. I think we mentioned it in our newsletter. They're very strong on their own. People know them without their partner, but having their partner in the picture certainly makes it more interesting, and we can see how they influence and inspire and nurture each other as artists. So that was one of the things I was looking for when we were selecting them for this week.
The just to go back to the whole Jackson Pollock, Lee Krasner quintessential artist couple, reading that story and understanding those two together was really frustrating for me, because Lee Krasner was a really, really strong artist, and she was always in his shadow.
I feel like she sacrificed a lot.
She did. She sacrificed her career. Well, she's famous.
She believed in him, so she went ahead and.
But she grew up in a culture where it was more to support him than to necessarily pursue her own. Real quick, Pumpkin Audrey is saying, is that oil paint? It is oil paint, Audrey. I'm assuming you're talking about Grant Wood. So I feel like what we're talking about tonight, though, these artist couples that we're talking about, they really have complementary relationships. They support each other.
Yeah.
And you can actually see each other's influences in the work. And then there's even some funny crossover influences between the pairings.
There are.
Which I'm excited about.
In which we had no idea. When we started researching, we were finding all these parallels and similarities. So that was kind of cool.
Right. So, and as, from the standpoint of educating and talking to you about art, some of the work we're going to look at tonight, like we tend to show you a lot of things that are like, that has wow factor for people that, are just starting to get into really looking at art, right? Because we want to sort of pull you in, get you engaged in the conversation, and maybe slowly introduce you to things that might be a little bit harder to look at sometimes. Ellsworth Kelly's work, if you were to see some of the more known paintings, might be a little bit difficult to understand why we're looking at what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of lead everybody in a little bit more slowly, and I don't understand why my slideshow isn't coming up. Here it is. So this is an Ellsworth Kelly drawing. He did a whole series of drawings that were just on plants. Now, this is not the work we typically see of Ellsworth Kelly, and if you have a real deep dive into this artist, you will know this work. However, if you go to the museum looking for Ellsworth Kelly works, you probably will not see these. But there's a reason I'm showing these first, and I don't want to dominate here, but I just want to start with this, and then we can kind of dig in.
Yeah.
So if you look carefully at these drawings, they are absolutely simplistic. Kelly does a fantastic job of distilling that beautiful plant down into the most interesting elements of shape. On top of that, and let's just back up one for a second, pay attention in these drawings to the spaces between what's depicted, the negative space. Okay, because for Kelly, shape is key. And well, color is also, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. And he's really interested in looking into the spaces of things that we don't typically see, that we don't. And I really think it takes a very smart, a very sort of different kind of refined eye to look for those simplicities in the world and find those things that are harder to see. Okay, if that makes any sense. So I put 4 of these plant drawings in here, and I left off on this one because it is one of the simplest of all. The other thing I love about these is the quality of his line, the weight of his line helps to depict the different elements of the plant in different ways. So you'll see one element that's pushed really far back. It's depicted in a very light hand. Things that are a little more prominent are depicted a little bit more heavily. So now that you can see these shapes, we start to break into what is Kelly's other work. And they are typical of these very, very large paintings that have a very straightforward color, a very flat and straightforward color, and then this really interesting relationship between the shape and the ground that space, or the ground that shape sits in. They have a very, very the dynamics in that relationship between those two things are what it is we're looking for, and it is what it is that Kelly was interested in. Take it away, Terry. I'm talking too much.
I think you've covered a lot of stuff that I couldn't have possibly covered. No, that's not true. I usually get into the background stuff of it. So when you start explaining art, the background and the visuals, I love it. So I know everybody out there probably does too. So that's.
But we need to know about him also.
About him. So I'm going to get into all the nitty-gritty background of him. So he's an American painter, sculptor, and printmaker, which we all know. He did about 30 sculptures in his career, not a whole lot. He was primarily a painter. He was educated at a school that most of our artists were educated at tonight, which we did not know until we started doing research. And we were like, look at that.
We're like, wow, they all go together.
They all go together. And I believe that the other 2 artists met here. That's where I'm finding where their paths have intersected. So he eventually graduated from the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston.
In Boston.
But he had, like most of our artists, he had a roundabout way of getting there. His education initially started prior to that at Pratt Institute from 1941 until he was drafted into the Army. And he actually, when he was in the Army, because he was an artist and designer, he was involved with a lot of other artists and designers, and they were in the Deception Unit, which was known as the Ghost Army. And they created inflatable tanks and decoys to kind of mislead the enemy. So he was involved in that even then. When he came home, he went on with the GI Bill. He continue to pursue his art career. His parents weren't really for it in the beginning when he first started going several years prior to prep, but they eventually ended up supporting him in his decision. And that's kind of how he started. Also, when he was going to the school, he also ended up in Paris. And that's when he started meeting other artists, John Cage, Merce Cunningham. He got his first solo show was in Paris, 1951.
Yeah.
And then he eventually came back to the States, graduated. He had his first U.S. show at Betty Parsons Gallery in 1956.
Betty Parsons. Ooh, I hate username 67 is here. He's like the Ghost Army.
The Ghost Army.
Good to see you. Love that green painting. Yeah, and again, I'm just going to jump back into my side of the dialogue here. I mean, keep thinking about what we looked at with those drawings and the way those relationships between what is supposed to be there and what is not there, sort of how they sort of work together on the page. And then you can sort of more easily sort of, dig into a painting like this, right? And allow those spaces to begin to flip. Consider those shapes. And not necessarily what they look like, although what they look like is certainly valid, but it's entirely possible that the green in this, right, is depicting the negative space of what Kelly was thinking about. And in fact, the white was the physical object. So there's a really interesting play on what is and what isn't in these. And most of the time, they're monumental in scale, right? And so they're not monumental, but they're larger than you. And they sort of now take on this whole new meaning because of that, which I find to be fascinating. So, then we start getting into some things with him that we have a video to show you, which I think helps also to sort of flesh out a little bit
what he was doing. And it's interesting because that video isn't well known. It comes from his romantic association, which we'll get to in a few moments.
Mike Rader says doing Trump loyal for the army will send you to non-objective painting. It will. It'll make you reconsider your entire life. All of a sudden you'll be like, that's it. Fuck it. I'm going to paint nothing.
There you go.
Mention the plants drawing show we saw.
Oh.
Yes. Well, Glenn, I did it. I gave you away. I said your name. I have a few of those in here. I don't know if you just came in a hair too late to see them, but I'm just going to back up to them because they're here. And these are some of my favorite Ellsworth Kelly pieces of all time. I feel like these are really just like, they really get to kind of what he was doing. But thanks for that. So yeah, this video that we have talks a lot about Kelly and Jack Shear's relationship with the Shaker Village, which we talked about last week with James Turrell as well, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing to have to consider with Ellsworth Kelly is color. So we talked a little bit about shape, and we talked a little bit about space, negative space. But color is another thing with Kelly, and Kelly was a master of color. And so, oftentimes we'll approach a painting like this, especially if we see it in a book or if we see it in a magazine, and we're just kind of like, we'll pass right by it, right? But what you have to try and imagine for a minute, and you can see it on your screen right now to some degree because the screen inherently has that intensity to the color, is this thing in real life it's an explosion for your eyes. So first of all, consider the fact that it is playing on one of each of the cones in your eye, the red, green, and blue.
It's an explosion just looking at it right here. So I can't imagine how intense it is in person.
It really can become mesmerizing. It's almost sublime, which is a funny word to use. But what is the title of that blue painting? I love it. Mike, we're going to get back to you on that one. I don't have that handy. So unlike a lecture in a classroom where I have slides and I know the titles, sizes, years, all of that, Google and Pinterest don't always provide me with those things. So I'm going to get back to you on that. We'll make a note of that. So anyway, the color is the other aspect of this. So while your eyes are trying to understand what's happening in a composition, what's forward, what's back, what are we supposed to be seeing as the object, what are we supposed to be seeing as the space. He then injects this element of color, which lights up your optical field, your brain, your whole sensory, your visual sensory palette is just like exploding. And so it really is experiential. It seems simple at first, but it's not. It's not. How big is that canvas? That canvas there is probably 5 feet by 7 feet. I mean,
this one's a big one.
They're big.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, just when you think you've got that intensity down,
he mutes it just a little bit, but not really. If you look at the borders of the actual shapes, there's a certain electricity going on.
Exactly. But what's happening there is he was able to pull that color down a little bit in terms of its saturation and bring the fields closer together. And so now he changes the relationship in a different way. He turns one knob down and one knob up. And it's like, whoa, look at that now. Now all of a sudden the green and blue have this other relationship. The red has been toned down and it's just like, bam!
Wow.
So, anyway, I got a little bit of a sculpture here. And again, they are these very minimal shape-oriented sculptures. I love this piece. It looks like it's in what appears to be the wall of a large building, maybe the interior wall of a sculpture garden. But it somehow opens the space up, right? It almost feels like we're looking out over, like an opening, like a window.
Yeah, it changes the landscape a little bit.
And when we see this video and we look at, think of shaker chairs. Think of the backs of shaker chairs. Think of the space between the backs and shaker chairs. And now all of a sudden these forms, start to sort of make a little more sense. And then what do you do? What happens when it becomes 40 feet tall or 50 feet tall? I mean, that's got to be 30 to 50 feet tall.
Yeah. Well, he was really interested in how your eye was going to perceive the line as you went from bottom to top, to the effect that would create as well, that implosion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that was Ellsworth Kelly. And I want to jump into Jack Shear for a minute, so that we can kind of like at least introduce the two of them.
Yeah.
And then we'll go into the video.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about Jack?
I can talk a little bit about Jack. I have to tell you, I'm not 100% sure when they met. I know that they moved together to their place back in 1984, so they were together from that time period at least all the way until he died back in 2015.
Would you like some relationship dirt?
Does it have to do with the love sculpture by any chance? Because I've got some dirt too.
The Robert Indiana love
Yes.
sculpture? Yeah, it does, actually.
Okay, all right.
Oh, we're on the same page. Oh, good. Okay, good.
Oh, my. And do you know why he broke up with him?
I do know why.
Oh, my God.
So Ellsworth Kelly was partners with Robert Indiana, the other famous artist.
You may know him from popular sculptures such as Love in Philadelphia.
Or the stamp, the postage stamp that said love on it. That's a Robert Indiana image.
He was really into text in his images.
So I Hate Username 67 says there is a great permanent exhibit of Ellsworth Kelly and Shaker furniture at the museum in New Britain, Connecticut.
And you're gonna love the video we're gonna.
You're gonna love the video we're gonna show you, and that sounds like a road trip to me. Once we have,
that sounds like another
post-vaccine road trip.
Yes.
I love that. All right, so go ahead and tell us what you're gonna tell us.
Oh well, you can say it too.
No,
but,
well, I would.
Well, he dated Robert Indiana for a period of about 8 years or so. And then what happened was...
We're not on Jack Shear. We're still on Ellsworth Kelly. So I'm going through... let me back up. All right, back to Ellsworth.
Back up.
Okay.
So the dirt on them. 1956 to 1964, they were together. But the thing that drove Ellsworth Kelly away was the use of words in the paintings.
He hated it.
He thought it wasn't worthy of high art. And that's one of the reasons why they broke up.
Robert, your work is trash. You put words in it. And then he dumped him.
Yeah.
They broke up over that.
That's crazy. They broke up over a couple of words.
They should have.
Anyway. So that was a little bit interesting because I had no idea and I was like, what? Okay, that's great. Okay.
All right. So moving on to Jack Shear.
Moving on to Jack Shear. Okay.
This was Ellsworth Kelly's long-term partner.
Long-term partner. They were actually married.
Married.
Yeah.
Married.
So So I know that they were together from at least the 80s, possibly a little bit earlier than that, 70s. And then they moved to Spencertown in 1984, and that's where they resided all the way up until Ellsworth Kelly died in 2015. Jack Shear still lives there. He maintains the foundation, the Ellsworth Kelly Foundation and organization.
And the studio is still intact, right?
The studio is still intact. He, at least it was at the time of an article that I read that we're going to get into in just a little bit. But Jack Shear was a photographer. These were some of the portraits that he worked on. He was particularly interested in nudes, in sexuality, portraiture. He actually collected quite a bit of photography too, and owned a very large collection that he donated to one of the educational places. Just get that
Nice.
like that.
That's excellent. Well, while you're trying to find that, can I point something out in this image that's up here?
I found it.
Oh, all right. Well, go ahead. You can.
Oh, no, well, you can go ahead and point that out, too.
Well, I just wanted to point out really quickly the first, we were talking a little bit about how some of these artist couples influence each other and the crossover in the work. Mm-hmm. And if you look at this Jack Shear photo right here, look at the shadow up above. Right, Ellsworth Kelly looked to things like this, especially cast shadow, for elements of shape and compositions for his paintings. And so here is an obvious sort of place in which their dialogues sort of, work together.
Yeah. Now the only thing is, I don't know if he did this photo series prior to meeting him. It might coincide around the same time period. There was a bit of an age difference. There's 30 years difference between Jack and Ellsworth.
Ah, okay.
But in any event, in 2016, Jack Shear had amassed this huge collection of photography. He was really into curating, and he donated about 500 photos to the Francis Young Tang Teaching Museum of Art Gallery at Skidmore College.
Oh, okay.
And there you could see lots of different examples of photo processes. He had lots of famous original photography from Diana Arbus, Stiglitz, Edward Steichen, Mapplethorpe. I might mispronounce some words. I'm sorry.
Some say maple, some say maple.
Yeah. Borrowed light selections from the Jack Shear collection. So he was very much into photography. You don't see a ton of his examples. He did do a book that was published a long time ago, The Four Marines.
Right, The Four Marines, which we had some examples of in the beginning, but I really wanted to jump into this series because this is really important.
So this is one of the connections where we're highlighting the love story behind Ellsworth Kelly and Jack Shear. So one of the most touching elements of the whole thing, and why we selected them, is I came across a New York Times article from 2017, and I do want to share the title with that because that's where it's from. It was written by Alicia DeSantis in the May 5th, 2017 New York Times. It was called Ellsworth Kelly's Studio Just as He Left It. So Ellsworth Kelly died in 2015. In 2017, this story presented Jack Shear maintained his studio in the exact order that Ellsworth Kelly had it when he passed away. Nothing had been touched. And what he did was he photographed different spaces in his studio to show Ellsworth Kelly's practice.
And to preserve
him and his legacy.
That moment, it's sort of like a moment. And when we look through these photos that are coming up, it's like there's his hat. There's Ellsworth. And you were telling me he'd go into the studio and put on his uniform.
He had a uniform, and we are going to see one of those photos. He kept all of his clothes hanging on a pole. And Jack was saying that he would go there, and it was like a uniform. He'd go there, he'd strip down, he'd put this uniform on, he'd go to work, and at the end of the day, he would take it off and hang it back up. And you're going to see that in one of the photographs. Everything here is just as Ellsworth Kelly left it. There's even a Poland Spring water bottle there. And as we go through some of the pictures, there's stories to every single one. We saw Ellsworth Kelly's cap all spattered with paint.
Audrey's making a really great question in the chat. She says, doesn't the love stamp have Ellsworth Kelly's red, blue, and green colors?
Aha.
Now, that's a good point. That's a good point. Now, I'm absolutely certain that we can draw that connection, right? However, Indiana and Kelly neither, I should say, owned those three colors. Red, blue, and green are the primary colors of light, and were a commonplace color scheme, and still are to some degree. But back then, when Indiana's sort of pop-esque movement was sort of, or his pop-esque paintings with these references to popular culture were being done along with Kelly's exploration of color, I think those three colors were really at the forefront. I mean, if you think about it, color TV was really starting to sort of just become a thing. And so red, blue, and green as the primary colors of light were probably a topic, just in terms of technology and science and a current discourse at that time. Will that studio be open to the public? Mike wants to know.
I don't have an answer for you. I don't think so, though. I think he is very protective of that studio. He actually reminded me of Lee John Phillips when he did the sketchbook with his grandfather's tool shed, and how they were very protective of it. This picture right here is his uniforms hanging, so you can kind of see it. They were on a pole. It looks like on a ladder. So we might never have the opportunity to actually go into the studio.
Well, yeah. And I often find that, when an exhibition, one of my favorite parts of an exhibition when this is included is when there's a recreation of the artist studio in the space. I connect so like deeply with those materials, the brushes, the cans that hold them, the tables, the marks on all of the, like the rags. To me, that's so much more, I guess maybe because I'm engaged in the process, but I really feel like, to me, that's such a deep part of connecting with that person. And you can see the Shaker influence here as well in the minimalistic approach to his studio and the way light is dealt with, the rectangular, windows are often rectilinear in shape, but there's a real, like, sort of isolated singular presence to these that, feels very sort of almost like the paintings in and of themselves to some degree. Milton Resnick's studio in Manhattan left untouched. It's fantastic. Isn't Judd's place in the Village also like that? That was not necessarily his main studio, Donald Judd, but it was definitely also maintained by Dia.
And if you go to Brandywine, the Wyeths, that studio is also left untouched. That's a gorgeous trip.
I want to go there. I have never been there.
If ever you want to see Andrew Wyeth's studio, because I went there with my dad. And and just all of his props are there. But the paints, the tubes of paint, his palette is still there.
And they do a really good job with lectures and all that. You can go there.
They have a docent and all of that. Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it really is.
Fantastic.
It is.
And then, as we move through these last Jack Shear images before we move on to Coulis and Howard, it kind of digs in and just gets a little bit more personal. So Terry, go ahead on this one.
In the article, it did share some secrets. So you're looking at a table right here. Ellsworth Kelly developed COPD and breathing conditions from working with all the fumes throughout his career. So you see a tissue box here, and you actually see a pulse oximeter because he always checked his pulse ox because his breathing status wasn't the best.
Which is fascinating. And I just have to say, Moped Vagrant, thanks for the gifted sub to Dave Schmidt. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really cool.
Great.
That's really cool. Yeah. So Dave, you just got a subscription from Moped Vagrant.
Yeah.
So and because I don't call people out and who they are on their chat, so they can maintain their anonymity, I'll tell you who that is tomorrow. But yeah, so the pulse ox.
The pulse ox. Yeah.
That's that little thing the doctor puts on your finger to measure your oxygen when
he was constantly checking his pulse oximeter. They were in the New York Times article, which if you can go online and look at it, Jack Shear was talking to the interviewer, Alicia DeSantis, and he was saying some secrets, like, Ellsworth Kelly had a drippy nose. That's why he had Kleenex, and Kleenex were all over the studio, and that's why we see like Kleenex boxes and stuff like that. He also said that he chose to photograph the studio in black and white because he felt that color belonged to Ellsworth Kelly, and he didn't want to take that away from him. And that's one of the reasons why this choked me up, this series of photographs. And like one of my most favorite photographs in the whole collection is about to come up. But it's just such a touching and intimate, you know,
it is. I love
preservation and expression of love. Like this really is an expression of love that he didn't want to take. He wanted to keep his studio, and he wanted to hold on to it and create this beautiful artwork from it. And that's the thing that was like, oh, this couple's gotta come on the show.
And then there's two last images. It's the last canvas he had on the wall.
This is the last canvas he had gessoed, and that was on the wall.
Right. And then
ready to be painted.
And then the last image is of his notes and his glasses.
And he would take lots of notes. He would make notes on all of his canvases, how many layers of gesso or paint or what he mixed. All that was written down in his notebooks.
It's such a beautiful story between these two. We have a video. It's very long, so what we're going to do is we're going to just grab 2 chunks of it and show you. The first chunk you'll see is Jack Shear, and he is going to be he's at Shaker Village. And then if I could remember how to get there, we got to go here. So let me just cue this up because there's a spot I want to go to right here. This text moves very, very fast on the screen. Not that, but this one. So I'm just going to leave this paused for a second so you can just read it, because when I press play, it's going to vanish. Okay, here we go.
Still pause. No.
Lift up your hands and your voices in praises. O Zion, be glad, thy Redeemer is come. The dove is returned, the green branch of olive. She waves as a token, the victory is won. Awake every laborer, the winter is past.
Jack, it's nice to be here with you. You know, it was 20 years ago that you started doing photography around here, but I don't think we ever got a chance to walk around here together, actually.
I did work here and over at Hancock.
Right.
And, you know, the buildings are amazing.
Well, the building here constituted the Shakers North family, and it was formed in 1800 specifically to bring new members into the community. So it did missionary work, it did the public preaching to the public when they came on Sunday to meetings. They wrote a lot of the tracts and theological works, and they trained people to be Shakers before they set them loose into the rest of the community.
I think when we were talking earlier, you said it had all the aspects of a little town.
There's a great quote by Jenny Wells, who was a sister who lived here until 1947 when the community closed. She said, when we were fully functioning, you wouldn't have heard me talk because it was so noisy here with the ox carts and the manufacturing, the sawmill and the laundry running. And it was a very busy place. We look at these Shaker communities as sort of pastoral and peaceful, but in their heyday, there was nothing but activity.
That roof line. Ugh.
I know that there's been some changes around here in the last 20 years, but all for the better.
Well, paint always peels, right?
This looks great. What's this?
Well, the building we're looking at is an 1854 wood house. So it stored about 300 cords of wood for the family.
Let me just do
Sure.
one photo here.
What's great about this is you can see the handwork on this. Just you can really envision somebody
Well, look at
chiseling
now.
away.
Look
Yeah,
what's
with
going
the
on
light.
right there. It's beautiful. The light's just, no, this is beautiful. Nice shot.
You see the building is up on iron beams holding it. It's a very fragile building. Next summer we'll be working on rebuilding the foundation so that we can take these beams out of here and the building can stand by itself. As I say, all these buildings are really purpose-built. This 1852 structure, which was put here as the sisters' workhouse. So this is where women worked. They did tailoring, handicrafts of all kinds. They had a little shop and store in here. And if you were coming from Albany or from Pittsfield, this was the main road. And right hanging here, there was a sign that advertised that Shaker goods were available for sale and that this was an office and a store. But
I'm going to take a jump ahead, if you don't mind, just so that we can kind of keep it moving to here.
1970, when I moved up to Columbia.
Just a hair.
I've always loved this Shaker table.
And this
In
is Ellsworth.
1970, when I moved up to Columbia County, I didn't have any furniture. So when my mother and father came to see me, she said, "You don't have any chairs to sit down in yet." So she brought her own chair the next time. I didn't know this was Shaker when I first saw it. It was nearby at an auction at a farmhouse. I saw some people that were talking about it and saying, "Oh, we should get this one." And to myself, I said, "Oh, no, you don't. I'm going to get it."
I love the auction mentality like that.
Friends of mine recognized it immediately, and I said, "I guess I need some more Shaker because I like it. It's simple, very well structured, and in the same categories that I like to make paintings in." Jack moved in 82, 84, and he was very interested in Shaker. He would always call me when there's an auction coming. I liked the boxes, but the top one, I remember when I saw it, I said, "Oh, that's like a shape that I have used in painting." Here are two paintings I did in 1965. In 1949, I lived in a hotel in Paris. Across the street, a building had little metal barriers on their windows. I made many drawings of it. I was interested, I guess, in this form then. And I understand there's only 4 of these in the whole Shaker history. I definitely wanted this. The curved forms that make up the back of the chair are shapes I use also. I see them as 3 curves in front of the white wall. The negative shapes are just as important. It's a very modern idea. I've used this well. Oh, wow, this is full of sweaters. I hope they're still good. Yep, this is what I'm looking for, Jack. I want some shirts, new shirts. It's very nice when you don't have anything else in the...
All right, so we're gonna jump back into just kind of moving forward here. But I love that because it not only gives you a little insight into their relationship, number one. Number two, I love the thought process in both of their works. Mm-hmm. Like I love seeing Jack Shear looking at the hand markings in that hand-hewn stone as he's photographing that, and then immediately jumping over and seeing Ellsworth Kelly admiring the minimalistic handwork in the Shaker furniture. Mm-hmm. And so you can see why they
gravitated towards each other. And their artwork and how it's influenced. Mike
Rader says it's amazing. I also really love Kelly's photos, and that they're also fully reflect the eye as a painter. Yeah, exactly. I really appreciated the way in which he makes these connections in this for us, and then the way they edited the video to kind of draw the direct line. And I said this before, and I kind of want to say it again, is I really think it takes a really Kelly's mind, and even the mind of a minimalist on some level, to look at the world. Like I think of Agnes Martin, who looked at the world, looked at nature through a very gridded sort of sensibility, to sort of take things apart and look at something so simple and find it to be so fascinating, and to want to bring it to us is a gift. That's really something that's really important. And I when I approach something like that, I would never dismiss something like that as being too simplistic I would immediately want to know what was going on in the head of that artist to say, okay, what are we looking at here? This is really, something worth looking at. So anyway.
Yeah. So that's our first couple.
Are we moving on?
We're moving on.
I don't even know how to push the buttons anymore.
There we go.
Oh, look,
So
all of
Jack
that stuff
Shear.
is just not supposed
What's with
to.
the Y right there?
There's two happening at once. It's
Oh,
still
I see.
new.
Okay.
I'm still learning.
But it's looking good.
You think it's looking good?
I think it's looking good.
All right. Well, let me see if I can make this work now. So we're gonna move on to our second artist couple at 8:55.
Love her.
This
I
is
know, it's
Holly
funny.
Coulis.
Holly Coulis.
Holly Coulis. Can I make her name come up?
Yes.
Ooh, Holly
You
Coulis.
can make her name come up.
All right, Holly Coulis.
So she's one of my favorite artists. I saw her show back in 2017 at a gallery I totally can't pronounce.
Oh, Memory Vessel just subscribed to Tier 1. Thank you, Memory
thank
Vessel.
you.
Woohoo!
So
We're on our way. We are
yes,
on our way.
We're on our way
to 15
12.
subs.
Geez, we're only 3 away.
We're 3 away from giving away that cabinet card, people. 3.
Oh my gosh.
3.
All right.
Okay.
So Holly Coulis, I actually first saw her show back in 2017. It was at a gallery that I can't pronounce. It's the Klaus von Nixigen Gallery.
Good enough.
Friends owned it. Friends of friends own that gallery. So we decided to go there. She mostly does oil on linen. She's a contemporary artist. She is actually from Ontario, Canada. She, just like Ellsworth Kelly, went to school at the School of Museum of Fine Arts in Boston for her MFA. Her undergrad BFA was up in Toronto. She's been showing all over the world, all over the States. I love the energy of her paintings. I love the simplified, abstract shapes.
Sound familiar?
Yeah. The show that I saw back in 2017 was called Table Studies. And as you can see, it's like objects on a tabletop that you can identify and associate with food.
Like the one we just had a second ago.
Just like the one we had a
this
second
one.
ago, the cigarettes and the water. But is it really? I don't know. But I adore her.
Well, yeah, and what I love about her, and this is another one of these situations where, and I hate to keep saying this, but I will, seeing these paintings in person, which I have, is an absolutely different experience.
Totally is.
The way she layers paint, the way she outlines paint with other colors to create these vibrant spaces between the edges and the backgrounds is fascinating. And I've got a couple in here where you can get kind of close. Pumpkin Audrey, I put this one in for you. When you get kind of close, you can really maybe see it in these. But again, she's moving from this intensified color scenario to a muted color scenario, and I just feel like Ellsworth Kelly's in here.
Yeah, and then the thing about the outlines too, it either acts as like a shadow or a backdrop, or it's expressing movement, the way that it's rendered, and that's one of the really captivating aspects of her artwork.
Yeah, no, Audrey, they are shot glasses. At least that's what I think. But I guess you can. To each his own. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And then I love it when she starts to get a little bit funkier with the composition. It's a little less direct. Now she's got these implied, I don't know whether those are liquids coming up out of the vessels.
I think she does a lot of work with steam, only because she will name her paintings something like Smoke and Steam and such like that. And then the other thing that I really like is when that vapor crosses the plane of a solid material.
She shifts
The colors.
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
And the other thing is these relationships that she's making, and the way she's putting line between, and then you put all that together with her color use. Her color use is just magic. It's magic. I would never pair I'm going to go with 6 greens in here, because she's got something that's sort of in the realm of a forest, and then something in a green leafy plant, which makes sense together, and then she goes into something that's totally neon, right? And then she goes to like a blue green texture, something like 1980s mall aesthetic blue green, and it's like, I would never in a million years consider putting those colors together, and she puts them in here in just the right balance. And they're just oh my God, I want to eat that painting.
She also has interesting use of lines because sometimes she bisects her planes at different angles to really move your eye around the composition. Her partner does similar things with lines, and when you see his work, you're gonna see a lot of similarities as well.
And we're kind of doing this, like this was not intentional, but somehow inadvertently happened. And then when we saw it, we were like, oh, wow, we totally have to talk about this, because there are connections in these between the partners and then across the couples that are really quite interesting. Here she is hand layering up this paint. You see that orange there, and you can see the 2 layers of orange in the piece.
Now, little story, like Holly Coulis story. When we had gone to the gallery, we were talking to one of the owners, and he's like, yeah, she's so meticulous. She's such a perfectionist. All the paintings arrived to be hung, and she was working all the way up until last minute. They were completed paintings, but she was just like, oh, I just have to do one more thing, or she thought of one more thing, and the paint was wet.
She was painting while they were hanging in the gallery.
Yeah, she was still painting and working on them.
I kind of love that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, she's and the thing is you would think if you did not see this image of her actually hand painting this, if you looked at these in the gallery, you would swear that she at least incorporated like a sign painter's wrist rest, right? Something to hold. If you've ever seen a sign painter work, they'll work with it's like a baton that allows them to rest their wrist on top while they stroke on a painting so that their hand doesn't physically touch the surface of the canvas. You'd swear there was at least some kind of assistance tool getting the geometry of this right, and there, from what I can tell, there isn't. It is just her absolutely fierce, consistent, meticulous approach to making these paintings that does this, and it's really, really quite admirable. Hot dogs and cheese.
So yeah, I love this one. And it's funny.
It's
You
funny.
got the squares of, I mean, of course it's abstract, but it's like hot dogs and a banana, and there's squares of American cheese and some potato chips. I mean, it's playful, and it crosses the line. It's like a decorative versus narrative.
Yeah, there's something
painting.
like tapestry. This is like tapestry meets pinball machine in a weird.
Yeah.
It's like a pinball machine. Ben says, "Yes, I do that." He's referring to like the assisting the hand, from touching that painting. And I think, Ben, I think we either all do it, or we assume when you see something like this that someone else does it, right? So, moving on, I like this one.
I like this one too. This is
It's got the same color as my stout. Look at that.
Look at that.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like
And then you can see the smoke. I like what she does scientifically too, because this is smoke, and she's looking at objects through smoke. So she's like playing with liquid, solid, gas, and she's kind of seeing how they interplay with each other as well. And I think that's one of the appealing aspects to me too. She's looking at things through filters that we see.
Right.
And she's depicting them that way as well.
And it's hard to see in this image, but if you look at that lemon, the more central region of the lemon, right, has one color. Then where it crosses the glasses, there's a greenish blue color. Then on the outside, it's a brighter yellow. Then on the inside again, it's got a different, she's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5, I would say, different tonalities to that yellow. So she's really considering this, and it really creates, what's funny about these pieces is in their flatness, she's implying that there's a depth. And I think she's failing to create that depth. And it's like this funny, and I don't mean failing in a bad way. I think she knows she's failing, right? They're by failing, she creates her own individual shapes again, like Kelly did, right? In a really interesting kind of way. And I think that's absolutely beautiful.
I think so too.
So this is one that Terry actually took in the gallery.
This is my daughter in front of one of the paintings.
So we actually do go look at arts.
We do. This was pre-pandemic. So,
right.
Yeah. And just it kind of gives you an idea of the scale of some of these paintings as well.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
All right. One more from your roll of photos in the gallery. And let's move on and do a little bit of Ridley Howard.
So this is Ridley Howard.
This is Holly Coulis's husband.
And I discovered him through looking at Holly Coulis's Instagram, and I was like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, it's her husband.
Right.
So, and he is also a phenomenal painter.
Ben's got to run real quick. He's saying goodnight to us all. He's got to run. Ben, thanks for coming, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
So I also am fascinated by this relationship because I feel like there are such interesting connections
There
here.
are. I feel like they very much influence each other.
Oh, no, totally.
Yeah. So I don't really know where they met, but it seems like their paths probably coincided at school because they both went to the same school and he graduated the year after she did. So, but I'm not 100% sure. So his paintings, he usually deals with some figures, and they are, to me, they're intriguing because you feel like you recognize some of the people and the portraits, but you don't. And he really flattens everything out. He puts these planes and shapes of color in there. And he has these very intimate, but not intimate. He reminds me of Hopper sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're looking at his figures and stuff like that, there's almost like this alienated feeling to them.
Yeah.
But I love it, just like I love Hopper.
Well, like we're looking at one where this couple is kissing right now, and there are a bunch of paintings I decided to pull and not put in here with some really highly charged sexual scenes. But when I say highly charged, what I mean is they're suggestive of the act.
Yeah.
But the figures that are in them feel as flat as the paint.
Well, the figures are painted very
They're
flatly
painted flat.
too. They are smooth finished. It's almost like an airbrush softened effect.
But the emotion is flat
The
too.
emotion is flat too. But you can't stop looking at them.
I know,
So
they're really strange. It's like, here's two in a tub.
Yeah.
With conveniently with an Ellsworth Kelly painting right over the top of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like this emptiness to them, right? And I'm really, it's like this weird thing where I can't stop looking. It's like
I can't stop
I
looking.
want these
And I
images to be
love
sexy,
them.
and they're not.
Well, some of
they are.
his sexier imagery isn't really the couples, because he does portray them in very risque situations, but some of them are like the shoes, when
Yes.
he paints the shoes,
Right.
or when he does like a woman standing there in her bathing suit, and it's just like
The butt?
she's all the way to the third.
I've got one of those,
Oh,
or two of
okay.
those. I've got two
Like,
of those.
those are some of my favorite paintings.
Tell
by
me that's
him.
not an Ellsworth Kelly painting
Yeah,
behind
look at
them.
that. Yep.
Come on.
Well, now that I've seen some of the stuff that we've been watching tonight too, and seeing that, I don't think I made that connection until you started pointing it
It's
out.
so clear.
It is.
Right? And,
Yeah.
and in a weird way, it's also his wife's paintings. It's Holly
Yes.
Coulis's paintings
It
too.
is, yeah.
Right? There's that flatness. I think he's kind of toying with this notion of, that it's not a double entendre, but it is. It's like, it's a flatness of space and it's a flatness of emotion. But then there's there's the emotion. Like, this one's beautiful,
Yeah,
right?
this one is
This one
beautiful.
doesn't feel like it doesn't have it, like some of the other ones do. There's the butt.
So yeah, and the funny thing is, well, not funny, but he does series paintings. So he does quite a few of these with this, the figures all the way, and I'm actually gonna say that the quarter of the painting, the rule of thirds, is like kind of even bisected a little
rule
bit
of
more.
fifths here,
Yeah,
the rule
that's the
of
rule of
fifths.
fifths. So she's all the way over there, but you'll see this in different renditions. He'll use different colors. He'll put her on the side.
Hang on, I'll back up. I thought I had another one right
No,
after
that's
this one.
okay. And he does the same thing with the shoes, and he does the same thing with the couple. So you see some repetition in these patterns where he's really playing with the spatial relationships on the canvas.
Right, absolutely. And again, there's the suggestion of a pool, right? And there's the suggestion of that concrete area around the pool. And it's all this space, non-space kind of thing. And I would love to just see him one day and say, all right, what's going on with the Ellsworth Kelly paintings here? Or how did he influence you? Like, how does that play into your work? Because I don't think it can't.
Yeah.
But then you get to something like this, and this is totally like, a very different feel.
Yeah.
Right. It's much more suggestive in its ground. There's waves in the ocean. There's clouds in the sky. There's folds in the drapery. So it's like Botero meets Hopper. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of pulling this one out of nowhere, but
yeah. But I usually cannot stop looking at his paintings. I would love to own one.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know. So they are hard to come by.
They are hard to come by. They're not cheap. Well, they're not expensive.
They're like $30,000.
No, you can get them for like $7,000.
They're the very small.
Here we are talking about these like it's a latte.
Sorry.
No. You can pick one up for $7,000.
$7,000.
No problem.
No problem.
Let's get 2.
Yeah.
And then, and I ended on this one. This is the last Ridley Howard image that I have, because I really think this one just strays way off of everything we've been talking about. But at the same time, I like the way her entire body vanishes. Right? It totally vanishes.
It's interesting what he does with portraits too, because he gets into a design element too. Some of them he goes a little bit into pattern, not too much.
Right.
But yeah.
Sculptori says has a surface like Ingres. Yes. Carolyn's like, really, these are incredible. Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, Jim, I like that. I like that comment. I feel like that's really on. And I've been trying to make sense of this somehow, but that actually helps me out a little bit. I appreciate that. But I ended on this one just because I felt like this one kind of defied the rest on some level, and I didn't see any others like this. He may have more. I could be missing something, but I like how she just kind of becomes, and what's weird is the glasses sort of offset that disappearance on some level. Like there's this play between her body and the glasses that she's sort of fading in and out of. And we talked a lot about Kelly and that's
negative
the differences between the space and non-space, and this one to me just seemed like a good place to end. But yeah, so if unfortunately there were no videos, there were no good studio pics of their space.
They're a young couple. Like when you compare Jack Shear and Ellsworth Kelly, I mean they've had decades together.
Yeah.
And this is like a newer, more contemporary couple. There were a couple of articles, like I know that they ran a gallery or they were in a show together. There was also a blog I found where somebody stopped by their studio to come and paint with them, but the pictures were just not that great. So we didn't put them up here because you were just like, oh, I'm not putting that up there. So
right.
That was that. So we were hoping in these images that we could actually see them work side to side. And there were pieces of theirs side by side. But when you do look at their paintings together, there's a couple of parallels that you're seeing in terms of palette and application of paint and the bisecting of lines and planes and how they divide up their canvases. Some Ellsworth Kelly references that might not quite, that are a little bit more subliminal and that we might be drawing upon.
Of course, and well, it's entirely possible they're inspired by him, but I can't imagine they've ever met before, although they did go to
school,
museum
and
school.
I am sure that in their education,
Ellsworth
Kelly went there and they were exposed to his art. So I'm sure that had something to do with that too.
I think we always know what famous people went to whatever institution we went to. They're inspirations to us.
Yeah.
Right? Mike Rader says, what does that say? Softness.
Like a Vaseline on the lens.
Ooh,
yeah. But the funny thing is with the flatness of his figure, she does this flatness of her still lifes.
But way more flat.
Way more flat, but there's still that flattening, and it makes this interesting dimensionality to their artwork, and a vagueness and a removedness, but which I coined that term just now.
I can't help but wonder if there's and I don't mean this in a negative way, but there's a kind of a competition that takes place in the studio on a very subtle level, not in any kind of like a diabolical way, but in a subtle way where they each know how each uses paint, but they're observing one another, obviously, because they spend the most time with each other. And, I can see in Holly Coulis's application of paint and the way she layers and the way she has to, some of her lines have this kind of real scumbled edge, this real kind of like deckled edge where she's not as concerned, and others she is absolutely. Whereas Ridley Howard seems much more concerned with that kind of precision. And I wonder if they both struggle
Yeah.
back and forth with each other's techniques at a time.
I think the precision point is a good one too, because they are very concerned with boundaries in their images.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that boundary is important when you're trying to define the negative space and the positive space, especially when you're painting back in a negative space, right? So when you are painting a figure and then you go in and paint a ground, you inevitably will have to adjust the space your figure occupies by adjusting the ground. So what happens there is the ground comes over that figure, right? So now when paint sits on top of paint, rather than the figure coming forward, there's an automatic physical kind of pushing back.
Yes.
And this is a struggle of the figure-ground relationship, of course, in any two-dimensional image, right? Especially painting. And for these two, I feel like that is going to be paramount in their thinking when they're doing their final, those final touches that Holly Coulis is doing in the last minute. She probably steps back from that piece and she sees something that's not moving in the direction she wants it to.
Yes.
So it's kind of a cool thing to think about.
It really is.
Pumpkin Audrey says, I think this was my favorite show. Audrey, that means a lot to us.
Thank you, Audrey.
Sculptori says, just had a thought. If Will Barnett had any influence on their work, that's a really interesting
That is a really
point.
interesting
The
question.
zip, right? And that kind of would go back to the Ellsworth Kelly kind of, relationship between those flatnesses and that kind of like no, I take that back. I mean, because I think Ellsworth Kelly was playing with space, whereas, Will Barnett. No, I'm thinking of Barnett Newman. Scratch that. I'm thinking of Barnett Newman. This was a 9.5% beer that I drank very, very fast. So I hope the audience will give me a little bit of latitude.
Yeah.
So this is something I'm not allowed to do normally when I'm talking about. Well, we do it when we're out at the gallery.
We do.
We never do it when we're in the classroom.
No.
So we're kind of in the middle of those two spaces right now.
There you go.
We're struggling.
That's okay.
Anyway, this was fun.
Yeah, this was
This
fun.
was good. I have to say one more quick thing, not about the artists, but just about what's coming up in the chat. You keep seeing these automatic messages that are generated in here. Memory vessels like Boozy Arts.
Yeah.
There's been a new message in there that's talking about our Discord server and signing up for that. I was really surprised to see that my mother did it, and she must have just clicked on that link and did it. So what Discord is, and there's no pressure here, but imagine this chat room that you're all in right now full time. Okay, so if you sign up for the Discord server, you actually have the opportunity to pop into different rooms based around topic. Right now, there's just a general chat, and you can pop in a comment and be like, oh, by the way, I'm in a show at so-and-so gallery, or, oh, by the way, I saw this painting at online. Slowly over time, that community will build, and this is also a place where our subscribers are going to have an opportunity to call into our show, much like Mike Rader did on that unboxing we did last week. Was that last week?
That was last week.
It was last week. So, click the link. Discord's available either through a browser or through an app. If you want the app on your phone or your device, you can do it that way. You can also get an app downloaded onto your computer. And it's a way to talk to us. We see Discord messages like texts. So you can bug us if you want. We might not always respond right away, but it's better than waiting till Tuesday night. If you have something pertinent, maybe you want to see something on the show, I don't know, jump into that Discord community and be a part of that if you want to. I had fun tonight.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was good.
Yeah.
Mom says, you two are so much fun. You're biased, Mom. Great show tonight, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so should we, you didn't drink much of that beer tonight.
Well, I have to go to work tomorrow.
Everybody, thanks so much. We love having you. We really
Yes.
appreciate you hanging out for this show. We will see you next week where we have another interesting artist to bring you.
Yes, so happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day, and we will all see you next week. All right, take care. Cheers.